Have you ever sat across from a girl, started talking and felt her interest fade within seconds? You lean in, your voice softens, your eyes beg for approval, and the spark is gone. It wasn't your words, it was the frame slipping from your hands before you even noticed. Machiavelli warned, the man who waits for permission is already defeated. In this video, you'll uncover the 6 deadly mistakes men make in conversations with women and how to fix them so every talk builds respect, every moment deepens attraction, and you win the frame for life. 1. The nature of losing the frame. The silence between words feels harmless, yet in that pause everything collapses. She is not hearing your story, she is reading the doubt in your eyes, the way your breath stalls before you speak, and in that hesitation, the frame, the invisible ground of respect, is gone. Daniel was 31, a sales manager in Dallas. Dinner with a woman he liked should have been easy. The restaurant buzzed with conversation, waiters weaving between tables. But the moment she looked at him, he leaned forward too much, voice dropping softer, sentences spilling to fill every quiet space. He thought eagerness would show interest. Instead, she leaned back, her eyes darting toward the menu, then the door. He laughed nervously to recover, explaining jokes, apologizing for interruptions. Every move he made confirmed he was chasing, not leading. The more he tried to win her attention, the more she withdrew into polite nods. He felt it in his chest, the frame slipping, control dissolving until he was a guest in his own story. That night ended with a quick handshake, a smile that promised nothing, and the cold realization that he had become invisible. Machiavelli wrote that the man who seeks approval confesses weakness before he even speaks. Power, like a mask at a masquerade, is believed only when worn without question. The moment you adjust it, the illusion breaks, and the role is rewritten forever. What if the weakness she noticed wasn't rejection at all, but the quiet signal that you no longer owned the ground beneath your feet? He thought leaning in was intimacy. She saw it as surrender. He thought filling silence was connection. She saw it as desperation. And when his presence collapsed, desire dissolved with it. How many times has presence been traded for permission? And how many times has permission cost attraction itself? When was the last time her eyes drifted to the door while you kept talking? Be honest, and I will show you how to flip that silence into strength. Type a few words or drop a green check right now. Do one thing tonight. Stop explaining. Stop softening your voice to be accepted. Let the silence stand. If fear rises, let it. That fear is proof you are stepping back into control. Soon you'll see how psychology reveals that this judgment of weakness happens in less than 3 seconds, and once you understand it, you will never sit across from her the same way again. Skip what comes next, and you will keep mistaking her fading eyes for mystery, when in truth, they are her silent verdict. The next section shows why her decision is made before you finish your first sentence, and why presence, not words, decides whether you rise or vanish. 2. The psychology of weak presence. The first seconds decide everything. You may think conversation begins when words leave your lips, but in truth, she has already judged you before the sentence is formed. A glance, a posture, the way your eyes search for ground, all of it writes the verdict faster than you imagine. Marcus was 29, a software engineer in Denver. He met Anna on a quiet Sunday morning at a coffee shop. He walked in with his laptop bag slung awkwardly across his shoulder, scanning the room as if seeking approval from strangers before daring to sit. When he reached her table, his shoulders curled forward, voice uncertain, each question pitched like he was asking for permission to belong. Anna smiled politely, but her gaze shifted. It was subtle. The brief pause before she reached for her cup, the slight tilt of her body away from his space. Marcus thought he was being respectful. What she felt was fragility. He had asked for entry instead of assuming it. Within minutes, the air between them shifted from possibility to obligation. She was listening, but not leaning in. He walked away later that day, wondering why the spark never even had the chance to ignite, unaware that his presence had collapsed before the conversation even began. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. Rulers project power before they open their mouths. Authority is believed first, explained later. To appear hesitant is to confess defeat. Like a king who walks into court with bowed head, the crown means nothing if the posture denies it. Presence is not decoration, it is the throne on which every word must sit. What if the reason she pulls away isn't about rejection at all, but because your silence, your posture, your searching eyes told her you were already beneath her choice? He thought politeness would invite closeness. She felt distance the moment he bent himself smaller. He thought careful words would show intelligence. She saw hesitation and heard weakness between the lines. And every man who folds his presence this way repeats the same fate, fading before he is seen. How many times has presence been traded for acceptance, and how many times has acceptance cost respect? Next time she tilts her body away before you even finish your sentence, will you hold steady or shrink again? If you dare, say it, and I will show you how stillness rewrites attraction. One word or a fire emoji is enough. Tonight, try this. Walk into any room as if you are already meant to be there. Do not glance for approval. Do not soften your tone into apology. Let stillness be your weight. If fear rises, let it sharpen you. In time, you will notice people leaning closer, not to fill the silence, but to understand what you are not explaining. That shift alone begins to rewrite your presence. And yet, weakness once sensed does not remain private. What she perceives quietly in her chest does not stop with her. It spreads. The next part reveals how women rewrite your role in their circle, and why one small collapse in presence can brand you forever in the eyes of everyone who sees it. Ignore what comes next, and you will keep repeating the same mistake, believing attraction is lost in words, when in truth, it dies in the silence before them. 3. How women rewrite your role. The first time she sees you fold, it does not stay between you and her. A woman rarely keeps that perception private. The moment she senses weakness, she shares it. Not always in words, sometimes only in the silence of her expression. And that silence spreads faster than anything you can say to repair it. What you thought was a personal moment becomes a public definition of who you are. Michael was 34, a project manager from Denver. He met Vanessa at a friend's birthday dinner, seated across the table in a crowded Italian restaurant. At first, he felt the spark of curiosity in her eyes, but halfway through the night, one small test shifted everything. She teased him lightly in front of the group, joking about how long he took to decide what wine to order. The table laughed. Michael smiled nervously and tried to explain, saying he just wanted everyone to be happy with the choice. That explanation was his surrender. He thought he was being polite. What she saw was hesitation. What her friends saw was compliance. And, in that moment, the frame was rewritten. The rest of the evening told the story clearly. Every time he spoke, her friend's eyes lingered on him with quiet amusement, as if waiting for another stumble. Vanessa leaned away, not out of cruelty but instinct. The attraction she once felt was replaced by a subtle certainty. He was the kind of man who sought permission before taking ground. By the time dessert arrived, he was no longer a potential partner in her eyes. He was the safe, agreeable background character, and nothing he could say afterward could erase that first impression that spread through the group like a stain on white cloth. Machiavelli warned that reputation is the armor or the prison that a man carries into every interaction. Once defined, it is rarely undone. To her friends, Michael was now the submissive one. To Vanessa, he was predictable. To himself, he was invisible. The truth is that women do not just respond to how you treat them privately. They respond to how you hold your frame when the world is watching. One collapse does not vanish with time. It calcifies into a role that can follow you for years. And here is the dark insight. The frame, once rewritten, is nearly impossible to reclaim. In love, as in politics, weakness displayed publicly brands you far deeper than any private mistake. It is the scarlet letter of social dynamics. You may imagine that persistence or kindness can wash it away. It cannot. In the theater of desire, one poor performance becomes your entire character. What comes next is not simply about romance. It is about how groups absorb and reflect weakness until it becomes your identity. And the moment that identity takes hold, recovery is no longer in your hands. He thought his words could defend him. She saw those words as evidence. They thought they were joking. He became the joke. And when the night ended, the laughter had done more damage than rejection ever could. How many times has that pattern repeated in your own life, disguised as harmless fun, that left you hollow? When did you last explain yourself under pressure just to look agreeable? Do not lie. I will show you why that mistake branded you as weak. Write a few words or drop an X so others can see it too. The action to take now is simple but hard. Never explain under pressure. Do not justify a choice when tested in front of others. Let silence hold the weight, even if your chest burns with the urge to defend. You will notice something subtle. People lean in not to hear your excuses, but to wonder why you do not give them. That moment of withheld explanation builds more authority than 1,000 perfect words. And yet, history has always warned men about surrendering this frame. Machiavelli wrote that rulers must never allow others to dictate the ground beneath them. Up next, you will see why this principle was not just about kingdoms, but about conversations, and how every man who forgets it loses far more than a woman's respect. 4. Machiavelli's warning across time. The deadliest mistake is not loud. It does not look like betrayal or cruelty. It looks like hesitation. The moment a man waits for another to set the pace, the ground beneath him shifts. In the eyes of Machiavelli, a ruler who abandons initiative has already surrendered his throne. In love, the same law holds. The man who lets her dictate the rhythm of interaction ceases to be a man she follows and becomes a man she manages. Take Daniel, 38, a financial advisor in Boston. He met Claire through colleagues, and after weeks of texting, they agreed to meet at a quiet jazz lounge downtown. The night began well. Laughter, shared stories, easy flow. But when the waiter asked about dessert, Claire playfully suggested something indulgent. Daniel hesitated, glancing at her, waiting for her to decide. She smiled faintly, placed the order herself, and the moment was invisible yet irreversible. Later that night, she teased him about being too agreeable. Daniel laughed along, thinking he was being adaptable, considerate. What she saw was the absence of stance. By the second date, attraction cooled. Within a month, she told him he was a great guy, but not what she was looking for. The truth is that she was never rejecting Daniel's kindness. She was rejecting the vacuum of leadership. In politics, Machiavelli warned rulers that surrendering initiative creates a void quickly filled by others. In relationships, that void is filled by her instincts. She does not consciously resent you for it, but her biology writes the verdict. If he cannot hold the frame in small choices, he cannot be trusted in bigger storms. Nation dies not from conflict, but from neutrality. Machiavelli's insight cuts through centuries. Power is not maintained by perfection, but by direction. A ruler does not win by pleasing every subject. He wins by holding the ground so firmly that others adjust to him. In romance, as in war, clarity is the weapon, and hesitation is the wound. Imagine a chess game where one player waits each move to see what the opponent prefers. The game is lost before the first piece is taken. What comes next is not just about personal dates. It is about how quickly weakness multiplies once the frame is surrendered in public view. One private collapse becomes a collective perception. And once the social echo begins, reclaiming respect is nearly impossible. He thought he was showing patience. She saw resignation. He thought agreement proved compatibility. She felt the boredom of control. And in that disconnect, centuries of warnings were ignored. How often has history repeated itself in your own life, masked as courtesy but felt as defeat? When did you last wait for her to choose so you could feel safe? If you dare, share it, and I will show you how to turn that hesitation into command. One word or a clock emoji is enough. Type it now. The action to take is stark. Stop waiting for her cue, choose the table, order the drink. Speak with the weight of a man who knows his own ground. If anxiety rises, let it. That discomfort is the birth of authority. You will see something strange. Her shoulders relax, her voice softens, and the group around you bends unconsciously toward your certainty, not because you forced them, but because you anchored them. And this is where the true cost emerges. The collapse does not end with her. It multiplies across her friends, your colleagues, her social world. The frame you surrender in silence today becomes the reputation that shadows you tomorrow. Up next, you will see how that surrender triggers the social domino of weakness, where one moment of folding privately becomes a lifetime of being framed publicly. 5. The social domino of weakness. The cruelest part is this. One private moment of weakness does not stay private. The instant it is seen, it spreads like wildfire. A single pause, a nervous laugh, a collapse under her test, suddenly it is no longer just her judgment. It becomes the judgment of everyone who watched. Machiavelli warned that weakness in public is never erased. It is not a scratch, it is a brand. Ethan was 31, working in marketing in Chicago. He had been dating Julia for 3 months when she invited him to a dinner with her friends. The evening started light, wine flowing, jokes flying, stories from college. Then Julia made a small comment about Ethan being too nice to ever say no. The group laughed. Ethan smiled weakly, trying to brush it off, but the damage was done. His silence in that moment was not neutrality, it was agreement. Her friends now saw him through her words. The laughter became a label. For the rest of the evening, he was the man who could be teased without risk. And Julia, without even meaning to, felt her attraction dim as his frame collapsed under the weight of her social world. What happened at that dinner was not just casual humor, it was reputation being rewritten in real time. Machiavelli would say that a prince who fails once in public becomes remembered not for his victories, but for his one display of weakness. No number of private moments of strength could undo the impression that settled into the room that night. Once the group tasted blood, Ethan could never return to being the leader of that frame. This is why attraction does not only live in private conversations, it is tested in the arenas where others watch. When laughter comes at your expense and you do not reclaim the ground, you are no longer the man at the center of her story. You are the man her friends joke about when she leaves the table. Power once lost in public is almost impossible to win back. What comes next is not random teasing, it is escalation, because weakness, once exposed, invites repetition, and repetition turns a single joke into your permanent role. He believed his quiet tolerance was maturity. She saw it as surrender. He thought ignoring the laughter would pass unnoticed. Instead, it multiplied his invisibility. The group was not cruel. They were simply reacting to the frame Ethan allowed. How many times has a single pause defined you longer than all your words combined? If you could whisper one command before laughing off the joke at your expense, what would you say? Be ruthless, and I will rewrite it in Machiavelli's voice. One short line or the book emoji is enough. The action is sharp. Never let the joke settle without reclaiming your stance. A simple redirect, a firm smile with a change of topic, or a playful strike back is enough to remind the group that you are not clay in their hands. If fear rises, welcome it. That fear is the edge where respect is either won or lost. You will notice something shift. Laughter quiets, eyes turn, and the very people who mocked now lean back, recalibrating who you are. But here lies the trap. Most men do not fall once. They fall again and again, thinking each collapse is small. In truth, every surrender is a stone added to the wall that cages them in. And soon they are not just weak in one dinner or one circle, they are weak everywhere. The next part reveals how those small surrenders escalate into the complete loss of self, where every conversation becomes a battlefield you walk into already defeated. Miss it, and you will keep reliving the same humiliation, never knowing how it all began. 6. The escalation of losing yourself. It never starts with a collapse. It starts with something small, a simple question, asked casually, that sounds harmless on the surface. So what do you do? She is not just curious, she is measuring. And instead of answering from presence, too many men answer from approval. They lean forward, smile too eagerly, and explain themselves as if they are on trial. In that instant, something subtle shifts. He thinks he is building connection. In truth, he is giving away the ground he should be standing on. David, 34, an engineer in Austin, met Claire at a friend's birthday party. The music was low, candles lit on a long dining table. Early in the night, Claire asked him about his work. David launched into a long explanation about his company, his hours, and how important his role was. He thought his detail proved value. What it actually proved was insecurity. When she teased him about always being busy, David laughed nervously and said, "Yeah, you're probably right, that was the first crack." Later, when she disagreed with him about a movie, he quickly changed his stance to align with hers. By the end of the evening, he was nodding more than speaking, chasing harmony instead of holding position. Claire was polite, even kind, but her interest cooled. What began as one harmless question ended as the quiet erasure of his presence. Machiavelli warned that the man who surrenders in small matters shows himself unfit for the greater war. Each moment of folding teaches the mind a habit. Each polite retreat is a rehearsal for future defeat. Attraction does not die with a single mistake. It dies with repetition. Like water carving stone, the erosion of presence is slow but permanent. What comes next is not disagreement, it is training. And the one being trained is not her, it is him. He is conditioning himself to shrink, to yield, to step aside until there is nothing left to step with. He believed he was keeping peace. She saw a man who could not hold tension. He thought agreeing quickly would make him likable. She felt the boredom of someone who could not stand his own ground. And each time his voice softened, each time he erased his position, he was not just losing her, he was losing himself. How many times has a man mistaken politeness for strength, only to find silence filling the space where respect should have been? What is one silence you will hold this week instead of rushing to please? If you dare, declare it, and I will give you the strategy to make stillness your weapon. One word, or the shield emoji is enough. Drop it now. The action is clear. Do not rush to fill silence. Do not fold at the first pushback. Hold your answer a moment longer. Say less, but let it land heavier. If unease rises, breathe through it. That unease is not a signal of danger, it is the birth of weight. Soon you will notice that she leans closer, not because she needs volume, but because she is searching for the ground you refuse to surrender. But here is the danger. Once the habit of surrender sets in, it does not stay in romance. It spreads to work, to friendships, to family. A man who cannot stand firm in one conversation soon cannot stand firm in any, and then the war is already lost before it is even fought. The next part reveals the most important truth of this entire video: how to reclaim the frame before you ever speak, and why presence, without apology, is the key to every conversation you will ever have. Miss it, and every dialogue that should have crowned you will instead erase you. This is where everything comes full circle. What you have just seen is not a list of tricks or clever lines. It was a blueprint for reclaiming the frame before you even speak. Every story, every collapse revealed the same law. The moment you wait for permission, you hand over power. Presence without apology, clarity without begging, strength without cruelty. That is what makes you unforgettable. And this isn't about becoming cold or detached. It is about becoming untouchable. You don't need to chase to be chosen. You don't need to bend to be valued. Respect is not begged for, it is commanded, in silence, through the way you hold yourself when pressure rises. One of our viewers, Marcus, a 29-year-old sales manager from Chicago, wrote to us after watching these lessons. For years, he admitted, he folded the moment a woman questioned him. He explained, over-apologized and lost himself in every conversation. After applying the strategy of holding silence and refusing to surrender the frame, he noticed the shift instantly. Not only did women lean closer when he stopped explaining, but his team at work began respecting him in a way they never had before. His advice to every man watching, if you don't hold your ground, you don't have any ground. Start there. You could be next. Subscribe now, because the shift starts quietly, but once it begins, it changes everything.